Good evening, good evening, good evening. It's Wednesday, June the 18th, 2014, and welcome to the BCS Experience History, Arts, Culture, and Politics in Review and Discussion. I'm Byron C. Saunders, your host with the most. The BCS Experience takes a look at our rich history, African American history. We're going to take a look at some of that history and how it relates to our culture, our history, our past. And we're going to connect the dots. We're going to connect the dots and show you how it's important for us to realize what history is really all about. The BCS Experience, History, Arts, Culture, Politics, and Review and Discussion. This is Internet Radio and will be aired live every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. from the studios of the BW Moving Images on the GoPro Radio Network. You know, I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk to you all across the country and around the globe. See, I want you to tune in every week on your computer or your phone. See, I want you to become a loyal listener, and I personally invite you to lend your voice to this radio talk show, to express your opinions on my weekly topics. This is social network radio at its finest. Now here's the number for you to call in to be a part of the discussion. Call 347-884-9839. Once again, that number to call is 347-884-9839. Oh my goodness. This week's topic, the war on poverty. What happened? And why are we still in the battle? Who is responsible for the ongoing communities of poverty that still exist in the richest country on the planet? After 42 years of the so-called war to end the madness. My goodness, we're still in it. Anyway, my show is the new Underground Railroad Express. Next stop is your neighborhood. All aboard to freedom and to freedom land. But before we meet my guests, my featured call-in guests, a little bit of history. This is how we always start off our show. The date, it's Monday. It's June the 15th. It's 1789. You see, on this date marks the birth of Josiah Henson in 1789. You see, he was an 18th century black abolitionist. The first anti-slavery law in Canada was passed in 1783 by then Ontario. And for the next 68 years, it is estimated that 50,000 blacks entered Canada for safety and freedom. One of them was Josiah Henson, a former slave from Kentucky. And during his lifetime, 3 masters owned Henson. Henson started preaching to raise money in the hope of buying his freedom. You see, his master took the money that Josiah had earned and then raised the price of Henson's freedom to $1,000. He returned to his master's plantation after a plot to secretly sell Josiah fell through when he informed his wife of his plan to escape. Soon after, he and his wife and their 4 children escaped to Canada. You see, on their journey to freedom, the Henson family struggled through sickness, wolves, and starvation. A tribe of Native Americans assisted the family along the way, and finally, on October the 28th, 1830, after many hardships, they reached freedom. He stayed in Canada only a short time before he decided to get involved with the Underground Railroad. Henson made several trips and led over 200 slaves to Canada. During his time in Canada, Josiah Henson started the Dawn Institute in Chatham, Ontario. You see, that was a refuge for fugitive slaves where they were taught trades to support themselves and their families. And when Henson went to the World's Fair in London, he became the first ex-slave to be granted an audience with Queen Victoria. He is also believed to be the model of Uncle Tom in Harriet Beecher Stowe's anti-slavery novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. I bet you didn't know that. Josiah Henson was a true hero and humanitarian during the time of the Emancipation Proclamation. Wow, what a story. What a brave individual. And tonight, I got another brave individual who stands on the shoulders of a Josiah Henson. I want to talk to you. You want to talk to me? Hey, let's connect the dots and make some sense out of it all. Let's talk. Call me at 347-884-9839. Tonight, I have my very special guest that's joining me as a featured call-in the studio is Dr. William Sonny Walker, who was the first black regional director of the Office of Economic Opportunity in 1972. You see, he, in that role, oversaw 8 southern states and some 300 local agencies that were provided funds to help low-income enhance their lives under the war on poverty. He dispensed more than $1 billion annually, arguably making him the most powerful black man and political official in the South. Welcome, Dr. William Sonny Walker, to the BCS Experience. How are you this evening? Oh, he's gone? Okay, let's bring in the other number. That's our call-in number. Okay, well, let's see if with Dr. Sonny Walker, William Sonny Walker, can get back on the air. In the meantime, I'm going to tell you about Dr. William Sonny Walker. Here's his biological statement. William Sonny Walker is founder and principal of the Sonny Walker Group. Okay, is this he? Yeah, here he is. He's back on with us. Dr. William Sonny Walker, welcome to the BCS Experience. Good evening, sir. Hello, Dr. Walker. We see you on the line, Dr. Walker. Are you with us? Can you hear us? Okay, we're having a little technical issue here, but that's quite all right. He is on the line. Let's see if we can get him back on can we call him on our line and see if we can hook him up that way? Yeah. So Dr. Walker, don't go away. We're going to call you on your line and see if we can get you linked in to us. Anyway, William Sonny Walker. He's the founder and principal of the Sonny Walker Group, a management consulting networking firm headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. Born in Arkansas, he has held leadership positions at several local, state, regional, and national levels, working on matters pertaining to strategic planning, early learning, education reform, political campaign management, economic and human resources development, worker productivity, partnership development, networking, and fundraising. So, prior to forming the Sonny Walker Group, he served as executive director and chief operating officer of the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change. He was also served as an assistant to Mrs. Coretta Scott King during his tenure at the Martin Luther King Center for Social Change, and he was also a speech preparation and developer for Coretta Scott King. Anyway, I see him back on the line again with us. He's trying to get through. Can we bring him in now? Let's see if he can get on. Dr. Walker? Dr. Sonny Walker? Okay. Well, we're going to get Sonny Walker. Don't go off your line. They're going to call you from my engineer's line and see if we can hook you in that way. Folks, what an evening. I just got off the airplane. If you're looking at me, I'm sweating bullets in here because I literally just got back to New York from coming in from Kansas City, got off the train, ran over here, and with 30 seconds to spare to get on air. So we're here. This is the BCS Experience. We're on the GoPro Radio Network and the studio. That's okay. If he's the only caller we can have, let's bring him in. Can we get him on now? Okay. Dr. Walker, don't stand by because they're going to hook you up through our studio entree. But we're going to get back to you. Anyway, more about Dr. Sonny Walker. Before assuming the position at the King Center, Dr. Walker was vice president of the National Alliance of Business. You see, for 13 years where he was responsible for the programs activities in 8 southern states. The National Alliance of Business was a business sector-led partnership dedicated to establishing an internationally competitive American workforce. You see, Sonny began his professional career as an educator in the Arkansas public schools, as a teacher, athletic coach, and administrator. He also served as president of both the Little Rock and Arkansas Association of Teachers. Now, following his directorship of the Economic Opportunity Agency of Little Rock, Arkansas, and Pulaski County, a community action agency, he served in Governor Winthrop Rockefeller's cabinet as head of the Arkansas State Economic Opportunity Office. After a stint as a division director for the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, Sonny Walker was appointed director of the Southeast region for the United States Office of Economic Opportunity and its successor agency, the U.S. Community Services Administration. He served as director for 10 years under 4 U.S. presidents: Nixon, Ford, Carter, and Reagan. Okay, Dr. Walker, are you on the line with us?
I'm on, yes.
Ah, there you are, my friend. You see, technology has its moments of, we just kind of lose it. I'm going to blame it on the sunspot, okay?
All right. Well, I'm connected now, thank goodness.
All right. We're going to take a break here, and when we come back, Dr. Walker, I'm going to ask you what happened to the war on poverty, my brother.
All right. We'll try to figure that out.
All right. Yes, sir. So don't go away, folks. You're listening to the BCS Experience on the GoPro Radio Network. We'll be right back.
GoPro Radio Network, fastest growing network in the galaxy, is starting off July with a whole new lineup on Wednesday with 2 new fireworks shows. Starting July 2nd at 4 p.m. Eastern, be ready, GoProtos, to boost your confidence and accept the nerd within with cheerleader and founder of Nerdy Girl Wellness, Emile Lamont, with her new show, Nerdy Girl Wellness Hour. Next, at 5 p.m., enjoy the ride and experience history on the BCS Experience as host Byron C. Saunders discusses history, art, culture, and politics in review. Then at 6 p.m., Deshaun Farad will be brightening up the world with his new show, Worldwide, as he delves into issues affecting blacks across the globe. Right after that, at 7 p.m., join journalist Earl Morgan on the Earl Morgan Hour as he spends the hour with good books, breaking news, and great guests. Then flying in at 8 p.m. with hot topics and fiery discussion is Kay Thompson Live, with the legendary radio host Kay Thompson of Inner City Broadcasting's WLIP, and her son, renowned actor Eric Payne, who starred in films such as Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, Drop Squad, and many more. Then at 9 p.m., cooking things up is Food Rap, featuring Shauna Glover and Nina Markel. Talk never tasted so good when it's all about good eating, food in the news, and great recipes. After that, at 10 p.m., is the Sexy Party Show with the bad boy of dating, Mr. Lucario of I Love New York fame, and his partners in crime, Miles Cunningham and pleasure expert Anita G. Last but not least, at 11 p.m. for the grand finale is Black Agenda TV Express, ending the fireworks with sought-out political commentator Glenn Ford, formerly of America's Forum. So listen to the voices in your head every Wednesday, starting July 2nd from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the GoPro Radio Network. Go to www.goproradio.com. That's www.goproradio.com. Listen to the voices in your head.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network. the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
All right, we're back on the BCS Experience. I'm Byron C. Saunders, your host with the most. We're talking to Dr. William Sonny Walker. He's in Atlanta, Georgia, folks. And without a doubt, Dr. William Sonny Walker, if you didn't know him, you may remember the War on Poverty back in the 1970s. Okay? He was the so-called czar. He was in charge of the War on Poverty and dispensed over billions of dollars every year during that time period. But Dr. Walker, what happened? What happened to the War on Poverty? We got poverty that's just seems like it's just out of control in the United States right now. So tell us what was happening and why didn't we win this war? What went down?
Well, I think the war was declared over by too many folk, too many writers, and too many other individuals, prognosticators that weren't close to it, but were viewing it from afar.
Yes.
If you will go back and reflect, you'll find that when LBJ was president, he appointed Sergeant Shriver
I remember.
to be his executive.
Yes.
And he brought Shriver into the executive office of the president. He didn't detail him somewhere out there. He didn't have access to the president, but he was able to have Ted Berry, who was the person from Cincinnati that was appointed and the first African American at the national level to really orchestrate the organization of community action agencies throughout the country.
Right.
And when LBJ was no longer president, it appears that a lot of the enthusiasm for making things happen left. So we just didn't have the same presidential encouragement and the presidential support that we had from the beginning.
Right.
And then a lot of folk started seeing different people have a voice in things back in the local level.
Right.
And they didn't like that. They weren't accustomed, for example, to black people and women being in certain occupations and having voices and having money and having programs and being able to help people. And so they turned it around. There was opposition to it, and there was never the ability for us to overcome that opposition.
Well, let me ask you something, Dr. Walker, because at the height of the beginning, the most successful years, in your opinion, what were the most successful years of the War on Poverty campaign?
I would say the first 10 years.
Okay.
From 1965 is when the program started.
That's right.
The legislation was passed in 64.
Right.
And really, local communities started organizing themselves in 1965. And by the end of that year, there were community action agencies from around the country, especially in major cities, and different people who had never had strong voices before were beginning to be at the helm of community action.
Yes.
And many folk just weren't ready for that.
Yes.
They weren't ready for women to be thinking that they were equal to men, and they were not ready for African Americans and Hispanics and other persons being able to act like they were equal to whites. That's what happened.
Okay.
We began to bring the opposition out of the closet, and they started really focusing a war against the war on poverty.
Your target communities in the beginning were where?
Well, now my first job was in upstate New York,
Yes.
in Onondaga County.
Yes.
That's Syracuse, where Syracuse University is located.
That's right.
We had a very strong program there, one of the first ones. Then I went back to my home state in Arkansas and was the director of the program in Little Rock, which was the capital,
Yes.
and was appointed by one of the Rockefeller brothers to head the state office. And that really positioned me to be considered for the job in Atlanta, which gave me responsibility for 8 southeastern states.
Right, right.
And that's Georgia,
Yes.
Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, and North and South Carolina. Those were the 8 states that I had responsibility for. More than 300 agencies that I was responsible for, seeing that they had the financial resources to do what that community decided it wanted to do and needed to do.
Well, during those first 10 years of success, it was obvious we were turning the corner. I remember it well. I grew up in Washington, D.C. Okay, my parents, my father, worked with HEW.
Is that right?
Yes, sir. He was part of the Civil Rights Division that was going around the country helping to desegregate those schools. He and his teams went into under federal protection to help set up the desegregation of the schools in many of the communities where the War on Poverty programs were being facilitated.
I see.
Okay.
In our nation's capital, huh? That's where you grew up.
That's where I grew up, Dr. Walker. And I mean, you know, prior to that, my folks worked at the National Security Agency. So I never knew what they did. They had security clearances, but that's the life of a person growing up in Washington, D.C. But I come back to the question of, you see, history has taught me one thing, Dr. Walker. You are a historian because you were there. You were the person in charge. There were enemies who orchestrated very much the same kind of pattern of obstructionism that is ongoing to this day. See, the process, and I'm going to get to this in a roundabout way, because at some point the enemies of democracy were those Dixiecrats, those politicians who participated in trying to deconstruct what was a good program. And
I don't think I've ever heard it cited and in any way any better than you've just done it. And I totally agree with you. We brought the enemy out of the closet.
Yes, I heard you say that.
They stood up and they fought it until it was really fought down to weakness.
That's
to a
right.
period of weakness.
Now, with
there
that,
there were lots of things that occurred. For example, they had legislation that changed the content of local agencies.
Yes.
We used to have low-income people really having the control of the local agencies and giving priority to what it is they felt they needed to do.
Yes.
Then Congress enacted something called the Green Amendment, which was orchestrated by a congresswoman named Edith Green, which really put local elected officials black in charge of the program at the local level.
Yes. And what happened was, because I was in Washington, obviously, when the Poor People's Campaign pulled up to their program, that was King's really his last major effort before he was assassinated, and he unfortunately did not see it come to its fullness, because that what would have been the culmination of the efforts that you were involved with, bringing attention to poor people all across the country, black, white, Hispanic, in every state. And if many people may recall, one of the target states was West Virginia, the coal mining people of West Virginia.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I recall it well. As a matter of fact, I used to visit programs in West Virginia.
Yes, sir. And what I say, and I'm going to put this forward because history has shown us this, and I think it's part of the obstructionism and the know nothing, do nothing Congress that we have today. It reminds me very similar to the one when Abraham Lincoln wanted and tried to and did engage as an executive order the Emancipation Proclamation.
Yes.
And then when he went to establish it as a constitutional amendment, because he was absolutely correct, they would have overridden his executive order by will of the Congress, created the amendment, which therefore made it a law that to end slavery, and then engage what would have been the first of the civil rights legislations. And then because of those, when he was assassinated, many people don't know this, Andrew Johnson almost individually turned this country right back to the Civil War, pre-Civil War moments.
Yes.
And created and within his own party, because at that point he came within one vote of being impeached, and if it hadn't been for Ulysses S. Grant,
Yes.
he is the president that literally preserved this union.
Yes.
They hated him. They fought him tooth and nail. They called him an alcoholic. But when you come to New York, and you know that, what's the old joke? Who's buried in Grant's tomb?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Ulysses S. Grant and his wife, because that is this country's largest mausoleum in honor of any single president in the United States, and it was because of what he did to preserve the integrity of this democratic ideal.
Amen.
Okay.
Well, it looks like you've got a pretty good grip on our history, and especially that made a difference. And I'm just delighted to hear you articulate it, and I recall much of it. I also spent a lot of time in the Little Rock school system when the Little Rock Nine was trying to be educated in Little Rock Central High School.
Yes, sir.
And I taught 5 of the Little Rock Nine, and I never will forget that the governor at that time, named Orville Forbes, called out the National Guard to block 9 children from integrating Little Rock Central High School.
Yes, sir.
Dwight Eisenhower was president at the time.
Yes, sir.
He federalized the troops and said, escort them in. And that's when you see all now pictures of Elizabeth Eckford being lost by herself and being harassed by the parents of the white kids at Little Rock Central.
Well, we got to take a break here. Sonny, we got to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about not only how and what your opinion is of how to fix what has gone wrong, because a lot has gone wrong, and I'm going to put something on the table that's really rather radical and about fighting back those enemies who have played this game of obstructionism. We're going to have to figure this out together, but you're listening to the BCS Experience on the GoPro Radio Network. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dashan Farad. Would you like to listen to a show that delves into issues affecting people of African descent across the globe? Or better yet, would you like to discuss politics, sports, and world affairs from a black perspective? If so, my show is the show for you. Tune in to Worldwide with Dashan Farad, Wednesdays live at 6 p.m. on the GoPro Radio Network. And always remember, I'm just a brother.
You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Yeah. Father, we don't need to escalate.
The views and opinions expressed on GoPro Radio Network shows are solely those of the speakers and are not necessarily the views or opinions of GoPro Radio Networks, Inc. or its affiliates. These broadcasts are provided on the understanding that they do not constitute professional advice or services. Individuals who speak in these broadcasts express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions. GoPro Radio Networks and its affiliates do not necessarily endorse or oppose any particular opinion or conclusion discussed in these broadcasts. You may not edit, modify, or redistribute these broadcasts in any way without the express permission of GoPro Radio Networks, Inc. GoPro Radio Networks assumes no liability for any of your activities in connection with these broadcasts or for your use of these broadcasts in connection with your website, computer, or playing device.
You want to know the truth, folks? Do you really want to know the truth? Well, perhaps you can't handle the truth. But if you can listen to GoPro Radio. Tune in at www.goproradio.com. Now, have I made myself clear?
GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head. I know I do.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
All right, we're back on the BCS experience. I'm Byron C. Saunders, your host with the most, and I'm talking to Dr. William Sonny Walker. You may not remember that name, but I know you do remember the War on Poverty. Well, Dr. William Sonny Walker was the chief operating officer who was in charge of dispensing the funds to that program. And as he just shared with us, the first 10 years from 65 to 75 were good years. But then the worms got into the apple, and then they tried to destroy what really was helping America and Americans out of the depths of despair and economic poverty. Now, Dr. Sonny Walker.
Yes, sir.
Here's something. I'm gonna put something on the table because it's high time we stop playing what I call tiddlywinks with those persons, men and women, congressmen and senators, who have played a what amounts to a game of obstruction. It's not even a game. I call it sedition and treason. Because the history is there. You see, there's a point at which sedition and treason could be considered an anomaly, not when it is and can be traced as a historic form of obstruction participated by those who swore and took to oath to protect and apply the laws and the Constitution of this country.
Yeah.
It stops being obstruction at a point when you continue to do the same thing time after time after time after time after time. And it's, in my opinion, Dr. Walker, it's time that the Attorney General of the United States issue warrants and subpoenas to have these men and women who call themselves congressmen and senators come to the well of the Senate and the Congress and tell us why they should not be indicted on charges of criminal activity to destroy the United States of America.
Absolutely. And especially certain populations.
Yes, sir.
To prevent them from being Americans, I mean, real Americans.
Yes, sir.
But, you know, another thing that I thought affected Lyndon Johnson's efforts and his desire to do something that truly made a difference. You know, he was confronted with the Vietnam War.
That's right.
Are you old enough to remember that war?
I am indeed, and I just got through coming back. I went to the University of Kansas, and I can remember that day in 1969, sitting up in Allen Fieldhouse, listening to the draft numbers being called. I went to a military academy in Washington, D.C. Okay, so not only do I remember it, I still have my selective service card. Okay.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Were you in school in D.C. when Barbara Simmons was chair of the board?
I was.
Know her?
I know Barbara Simmons. I was born in 1950 in Nashville, Tennessee. So I grew up in Washington, D.C. and went to elementary school and high school in Washington. And graduated class of 68 from St. John's Military Academy.
Barbara Simmons was the wife of Dr. Her husband was assistant director of the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
HUD, yes,
and,
sir.
Sam Simmons.
Yeah.
And by the way, the guy who ran for president and said all kinds of negative things about African Americans is the son of the guy at that time named George Romney, who was heading HUD, and he had several prominent blacks in his cabinet.
Yes, he did.
That truly helped to make some differences then in housing.
Yes, sir.
Nothing like his son.
Yeah,
nothing. Absolutely nothing
That's
like his son.
That's right. And really was part of the. You see, we had diplomacy. We had real leadership in Washington at that time. We had Everett Dirksen. Even though Republicans fought tooth and nail with the Democrats, the right wing element at that time was Goldwater. And
yes, I remember.
Yes.
I remember.
Oh yeah.
I remember. Now, I don't know if you remember Wiley Blanton, who was head of the poverty program in D.C. And later went on to become dean of the School of Law at Howard University. Did you know Wiley Branson?
That name I knew because my parents were, my father was a graduate of Tennessee State University, my mother a graduate of Fisk. My father was the National Alumni Association president at TSU. And we hosted Benjamin C. Saunders and Helen Meacham Saunders. We hosted many a conversation in my parents' living room with some of the folks who were the movers and shakers back in those days. As you know, the civil rights movement was not just in the streets in the South. There was some like Medgar Evers. You know, a lot of those meetings took place in our parents' living rooms. And
but let me tell you, I want you to know I spent some time in Nashville. I was there when Luby's house was bombed.
See?
And I was there when Thurgood Marshall was teaching at Fisk.
At Fisk.
And in the summer months.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I do. And John Lewis, of course, was first affected physically in Nashville, Tennessee. And of course, the students at Fisk and Tennessee State were all banding together to try to make some change. I was there.
Right. That's exactly right. So see, coming out of that's why I say we have to look at history. Our politicians and the Congressional Black Caucus, both on a national level and state levels, it is my opinion, they have got to go back and look at the history of the obstruction and call upon the federal government to intervene at a point where it says, you know what they're practicing, in addition to sedition and treason, they are engaging in forms of anarchy. And it is high time to bring them to put their feet on the line and say, you know what? You need to know it's time for us to stop this insanity. And that's how your program got destroyed, because they began to cut back, they cut into the little pieces from the side and the fringes, and ultimately destroy what was a great concept and idea. And so what we got now is as a result, and when I hear about the homelessness that's in our country right now and the levels of poverty, and some people don't really realize 50% of the homeless people in this country today are returning soldiers. They're veterans.
Yes.
That's an alarming number.
Let me just tell you a little bit of what is currently going on in Atlanta.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday,
yes, sir.
Atlanta opened something called the Center for Civil and Human Rights.
That's right.
And,
I saw that.
I don't know if you're aware of the fact that Dr. King's papers were purchased from the person in Boston where they have been for years.
That's right.
And they are now back in Atlanta in the Center for Civil and Human Rights. Yesterday, they honored those who helped to ride and integrate the buses.
Yes.
This was a marvelous day in Atlanta yesterday.
Yes, it was.
When hundreds of people went through to look at the things that occurred in the South, and the crossing of Pettus Bridge, and all of those things that many of our young folks don't know a thing about.
That's right.
And they need to know from whence they have come.
Yes, sir.
It showed signs of the duplicate restrooms, color in white. Not only that, the water fountains, and not only water fountains, but even vending machines.
Yes,
you
sir.
had to, if you were black, you had to get your soda out of a machine that was restricted to black.
I know.
And I don't know if you experienced that kind of thing in D.C., but we did in the South.
I did, but I remember going back to Nashville to see my grandmother and my relatives, and I do remember being told we couldn't eat at the Greyhound bus station in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Right.
But see, I do, and my good friend Miranda McKenzie posted her picture in front of the site yesterday, and so many of my friends. I lived in Atlanta for 13 years, Dr. Walker. I ran Just Us Theater Company.
I have worked with Miranda over the years, and you know now she's with UNCF.
Yes, I do, sir. I really
Yeah.
do. Hey, listen.
I was with her yesterday at this opening. She was there.
She posted a picture of her standing there in front of it. That's why I know it. It's on my Facebook page because she's one of my friends. See, I was mentored by Hosea Williams.
Is that right?
And his daughter and I, Elizabeth, who is running the Hosea Feed the Hungry.
I know them all well. I worked
yes,
closely
sir.
with Horette. I don't know if you are aware of them or not, but I spent 8 years as executive director of the King Center here.
I do indeed. See, we have met before, Dr. Walker. You may not remember. I ran Just Us Theater Company there. And I ran Jamandi Productions as well. And I worked with SCLC, with the Metro Atlanta SCLC and Hosea Williams. I was there at Hunter Street Baptist Church, where it originally got started for Hosea Feed the Hungry, because I was in the soup kitchen there working.
And you know who the pastor was? It was Abernathy.
Reverend Abernathy. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Before they moved to West
down
Hunter.
the road at a very prominent church that Maynard Jackson's father was pastor of, called Friendship, the
Yes, sir.
oldest black Baptist church in Atlanta.
And not only that, we got to take a break, because when we come back, we got to talk about how to preserve some of this history, because they just recently tore down Friendship Baptist Church to put up a new stadium for the Atlanta Falcons. I am very much aware of all the politics and ongoings in Atlanta. And Dr. Walker, you stand on the shoulders of some mighty powerful people, and we stand on your shoulders. So don't go away, Dr. Walker. We're going to finish up, but when we get back, we're going to shift gears and talk about how we can fix this, in your opinion. You're listening to the BCS Experience on the GoPro Radio Network. We'll be right back.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a great opportunity. If you have a product or a service, a talent, or something important to say, now's your chance to have your very own radio show. Whether you're just starting out, a veteran looking for a professional platform to enhance your presentation, the GoPro Radio Network is the premier place to cultivate and share new and exciting content. We'll help you to grow your audience and keep it growing long after your first broadcast. Now you have a voice. Call 212-696-8562 today, or visit www.goproradio.com, and you'll be amazed at how easy and affordable it is to have your very own show on the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
You want to know the truth, folks? Do you really want to know the truth? Well, perhaps you can't handle the truth. But if you can listen to GoPro Radio. Tune in at www.goproradio.com. Now, have I made myself clear?
GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head. I know I do.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
All right, we're back on the BCS Experience, and I'm talking to one of the construct and the engineers of the War on Poverty. 1965, folks. We were winning that war. But today, in 2014, Dr. Sonny Walker, I hate to say it, it looks like we weren't winning. It looks like that war came upon us and has left us, and in the wake, we got roadkill along the side highways, and there are more poor people today than there probably were back in that time. So how do we...
Or at least as many.
At least as many.
That. There are a few people that have crossed over, but these are tough, very tough times. I want you to know that. And we acknowledge that we've got much, much more work to do. We really do.
Dr. Walker, we got a few minutes left in this program, and I have to apologize to my listeners because I wanted to engage in a conversation, but you have technical difficulties, and that happens. But here's the value of what we are talking about. And we'll get you back on because you have some of the solutions, not just dealing with stating the problem. You see, my show, as part of the new Underground Railroad Express, is about providing tangible solutions based upon knowing our history from the past, how it has impacted on us right now, and then coming up with some solutions. Not just talk about it, but we need some solutions. So, Dr. Walker, give me a summary of your opinion of what should be done now, both politically and socially.
Well, I hate to be critical of governors, but let me say this, that all of the programs in the entire nation now are controlled by the respective governors.
Yes.
They have something called Community Services Block Grants. And any and everything you do in the state is controlled and dictated by the governor of that state.
Yes.
If there's anything you're doing that rocks the boat or changes the culture or changes what has been, the governors will get in the way and decide you're not going to do it. And they control the money for the people that are working for the programs. They listen to the governor.
Yes, they do.
And that's the problem. Unless we get some progressive governors who truly believe that change ought to come and that we ought to do something about poverty, we are not going to be able to achieve the goals and objectives that LBJ and the Kennedys and others decided they started the war on poverty for.
Right.
That was Dr. King's wish, his times at the White House asking not only the Kennedys but LBJ and other Carter to do something about poverty. And that's why we're trying to do things like Omalami is doing here with feeding the hungry.
Yes, sir.
Taking the absolute goal of her father to feed the hungry. And if we didn't have that, many people would be hungrier because they've been imposing restrictions on food stamps, requiring people to have tests and to go through all kinds of requirements in order to eat.
That's right.
And that kind of thing to me is un-American.
Yes, sir.
And I think that we ought to do everything we can to turn it around.
Yes,
and
sir.
I hope that you will continue to use the air and use the radio that you have to get people to mobilize themselves and to sacrifice and to do something to change the way America is. This is not the kind of America that we ought to have in 2014.
Absolutely. And the biggest change is get registered and vote. Because
Absolutely.
what we have just witnessed, and it's amazing to me, what we just witnessed with Eric Cantor being defeated is that when chickens come home to roost, like Malcolm said, they will bite you in the butt every single time because they have been sending out this signal, voter suppression. And guess what? White folks ain't voting. They didn't even vote their own back in. Larry Moe and Curly Joe could have won that race. Okay. And so here it is, folks. We are no longer the minority in this country. We are the majority. Make sure you understand what I just said. People of color in the United States of America are no longer the minority. We have the numbers, people. We can make the change.
Absolutely.
So get registered. Vote. You can vote these clowns out of office.
Glory be to you, and I am delighted to have had this opportunity to have the exchange. I look forward to meeting you personally.
Yes, sir.
And let's, the two of us,
Yes, sir.
be sure that we don't stop the struggle and stop the fight.
That's
We
what
have got to lead
Yes, sir.
the way because we know what the problems are. We've identified what the problems are. Now we've got to rally others to join us in the fight.
Yes, sir. And I really want to thank my good friend, our good mutual friend, Maynard Eaton, Communications Director for the National Headquarters of Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Dr. Sonny Walker. Thank you so very much for being a part of the BCS experience. We're going to have the continuation of this conversation because there was some in-depth stuff we didn't get a chance to go to. But this is just scraping the tip of the iceberg, as they say. And
Call me whenever you're ready. I'm
Yes.
ready to be there for you and to with you.
Yes, sir. Well, I certainly appreciate it. Continue the work down there in Atlanta, Georgia. My apology to my listening audience because you couldn't call in and be a part of this. But we're gonna take another step. I'll get together with Maynard. We're gonna do part 2 because we must continue this conversation and move us forward on this war. The war has not ended, folks. It's only shifted gears. All right, Dr. Sonny Walker.
Thank you, and God bless.
God bless you, my friend. Well, folks, This has been another adventure, but this has been the BCX experience on the GoPro Radio Network, your social network's live talk radio show, produced and sponsored by BW Moving Images. Tylon Xavier Washington, producer. Tatiana Washington, online engineer. You are the best, Tatiana. Thank you so very much. Production assistants, Tayana Washington. Y'all rock out there in the booth, in the studio. A special thank you to the Jazz Lounge Project and Andrew Julian Myers for my fabulous show's theme music. You see, your support of BW Moving Images is important to us, and there is a wonderful documentary that my producer Tylon Xavier Washington has made available. You need to have this in your library, folks. It's entitled Disappearing Voices: The Decline of Black Radio. See, you can purchase this right now. Go to disappearingvoices.com, get your copy, tell them you heard about it on the BCS experience, and we'll get it autographed. It'll be worth more than you paid for. I'm telling you, it'll be a part of your historic collection. That's how we preserve Black history and Black radio. Well, tune in next Wednesday when my show, the BCS Experience, History, Arts, Culture, Politics, in Review and Discussion, will be on live from 5 to 6 p.m. Now, coming up next is Black Agenda TV Express, 6 to 6:30, with Glenn Ford. Then followed by the Earl Morgan Hour from 7 to 8. Now check it out, because following him, see, you can stay right here on GoPro Radio. You got Kay Thompson Live. She's your hostess with the mostest, all right, from 8 to 9. And then if you really, really want to know how to stay healthy, go to Food Rap with Shauna L. Glover and Nina Marcal. And that's from 9 to 10 p.m. And then closing out the GoPro night on Wednesday from 10 to 11. You got to stay up before you kiss that significant other goodnight. Have some fun on the Sexy Party Show, hosted by Mr. Lucario and Pavion O'Connor, right here on GoProRadioNetwork.com. Hey, I'm Byron C. Saunders, and it's been all about the BCS experience. Join me next Wednesday when my very special guest will be you, my listening audience, with another opportunity to appreciate our rich cultural history and learn how it impacts on our lives today. Until then, I'm out of here for the moment. Peace and love always.